Greetings and bienvenue, midnight crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
First, the haunted island. Be me, in college, 18 to 19. I was a ghost hunter in my spare time. Search the interwebs for haunted places near me. Find an island southwest of the metro area where I was living. Drive down there alone first a few times. The area has an eerie vibe as soon as you cross the bridge to get to the island. The air seems thicker. I drive to explore the whole island. See an orb slowly float across the street from a rural house to the cemetery. The island has lots of Indian burial sites. Do an EVP session and get what sounds like a woman's scream. I didn't react to it in person, only showed up on tape. Nearly every time I enter the island, I get tailgated by a white truck. I'm guessing the truck isn't a phantom truck, but belongs to a local trying to keep people out. Still, very menacing. I pulled to the side of the road once to let him pass, but he also pulled to the side of the road and stayed there until I left. This is just the tip of the iceberg of that place. I'll post the more unnerving story below. Since I had a few experiences on the island and really enjoyed how creepy it was, particularly being followed by said truck, I went there with a couple of roommates a few different times. One roommate swears he saw a guy by the gatepost where I had originally seen an orb pass by to the cemetery. I was doing the same thing and driving down the same road again with a different friend at a later date when he yelled at me to slam on my brakes and back up. He swears he saw a guy. My friend and my roommates, although we went to the same college, didn't know each other as my friend never really came to my place. We'd mainly just meet at the college and ghost hunt. Both my friend and my roommates gave the same description of the guy. Flannel jacket, holding a rifle, and smoking a cigarette. One roommate claimed to have seen the man appear in the rear view mirror sitting in the backseat of my car while we were driving, but I never saw the man. That's all well and good, but it gets better. Same age, same setting. I have a GF who lives a ways away. I'd visit her at her place. She has a super annoying friend that always wanted to hook up. Friend was an idiot as she would sometimes text me using girlfriend's phone. Asks to hook up on a somewhat regular occasion, but I am faithful. Finally I cave into peer pressure and tell her to come over. Send her directions to the island and tell her I'll be at a house party. To clear things up, I wasn't at a house party there, I wasn't even there. I was at my apartment playing PS3, but this person was annoying, so I sent her on a wild goose chase. This going be good. I'm enjoying my evening and not hearing from her at all. She was so dumb that she didn't bother to save my number from my girlfriend's phone. Hours go by and I'm playing some WWE game. Get text from GF.
Hey Annan, what happened to dumb friend?
Tell her I don't know what she's talking about. Says she saw our texts. Top KEK for friend not even trying to be discreet and deleting texts. Admit to GF that I sent her stupid friend on wild goose chase and told her to meet me at a party. GF says she's worried about her friend. Gee, I wonder why. GF doesn't know I ghost hunt. GF doesn't know stories about the island I sent her to. GF says her idiot friend is spooked beyond repair, and forwards me some texts. Texts start off as expected, first inquiring my GF where I could be, then eventually getting pissed upon realization that I sent her on goose chase. Texts take a dark turn. Oh shit, I see something. JPG. Texts GF forwarded me from an idiot friend goes on to state that as she was searching for me she sees someone. She sees a man in a flannel jacket holding a rifle and smoking a cigarette. Goosebumps. She nopes the fuck out of there at the sight of that guy. Texts go on to say that she's not even driving back home, that she's going straight to her aunt and uncles who lived closer. Texts say she kept seeing the man in her rear view mirror, sometimes standing in the middle of the road behind her, sometimes in her back seat. This occurred all the way from the island to her aunt and uncle's place. I sent an annoying friend on a wild goose chase and she got followed by the same ghost my friend and roommates both saw on different occasions. This is my account of living in a haunted house with demonic activity for a year and a half. First, a little history, as the house has always been in the family since it was first constructed. As a very young kid, my great aunt and her sister lived there. They were my grandpa's aunts and neither had kids of their own, as far as I can recall. They both passed away when I was very young, but I still have very faint memories of visiting them and hearing one of the aunts' comforting and comical cackling every time she cracked a joke. After they had passed on, my grandpa inherited the property, and I'd usually stay out there with my dad and sisters during our annual Christmas get-together, while the rest of the visiting relatives would stay at my grandparents' house in town. It was during this time that I began to see the ghosts of my great aunts, as well as a farmhand who died at that house. As a kid, the farmhand is who frightened me the most, as he'd typically appear in the early morning hours right outside the bathroom window, typically only when I looked in the mirror. There's nothing more off-putting than a ghost watching you while you shit. The house was set up in a way that there were two entry doors, one that led to the main entry and one that led up to the living room, which was rarely used. When you entered through the main door, there were two sets of stairs, one going up to the main level, and one going down to the basement. On the main level, there is a beautiful sunroom where my grandparents kept plants and books and where I'd enjoy reading. The sunroom was added to the house in the 1950s and I used it as my study. There is also a kitchen complete with table and fixtures from between the 1920s and 1950s, a bathroom, where I'd see the farmhand, a living room, and a bedroom that sits between the living room and the hall to the bathroom. By the bathroom there is a narrow staircase that leads to the upstairs bedrooms. The hall abruptly ends at the top of the stairs, with a bedroom on the left, and a bedroom on the right, and an attic behind both bedrooms that is only accessible via a door in one of the bedrooms. Downstairs is the basement, which had some mold, and contains a washer and dryer and is where I do my laundry. Be me, right after college. I found a job up north, not far from where my grandparents live. As mentioned, grandparents owned two houses, but house in the country sits empty. However, they keep the heat and electricity on all year round. Ask my grandparents if I could rent the house from them, as they'd get a little money and the peace of mind knowing someone is looking after the property. Grandparents agree, first denying rent, but I insist I give them something, so we agree to $100 a month dirt cheap, I know. It's a win-win. House is a beautiful Cape Cod house in the middle of the country built in the 1920s or 30s. The house is in overall good condition, with a few flaws here and there and a little mold in the basement. Hyped as F to be an amateur ghost bro and getting to move into a haunted house. Get my shit all unpacked in my new home, instantly happy. Decide to sleep upstairs in the bedroom I'd always sleep in as a kid during Christmas. First few nights go well, with the odd noises happening here and there. The noises I was accustomed to as a kid, a few bumps and what sounded like footsteps. Next few nights I start to hear what sounded like whispers coming from the next room at night. Footsteps I'd heard in the past seemed heavier now and would make their way up the stairs and back down the stairs. They were heavy boots, like those a farmer would wear. I knew it was the farmhand. One night I wake up to see my great aunt lying in bed next to me, turned to her side and staring right into my eyes. She was translucent and green, with only sunken black pits for eyes. I nope the fuck out at that point and decide to move my shit downstairs. As activity picks up over the next few weeks, I make a plea bargain with the spirits, that I'd stay in the downstairs bedroom and typically leave the upstairs alone. I'd only ever go upstairs during the day now, and I'd make sure to keep both bedroom doors closed. Not good enough. PNG. I'd always visit my grandparents in town, typically several times a week, and my grandpa would tend to come to the house a few times a week as well, typically either later in the morning or around noon, and he'd help himself to the supplies I'd keep around for him, which consisted of Nutter Butter cookies, orange soda, and root beer, the trifecta of snacks that my grandpa had always enjoyed, and we'd just shoot the breeze. I refrained from telling my grandparents about any experience as I don't want to be seen as crazy, and I don't want them to fear for my safety. Paranormal activity increases, as now apparitions and voices become more of a common occurrence. Most activity was confined to the upstairs portion of the house. The occurrences included my great-aunt's cackling laughter, as well as crying, whispers, a man occasionally yelling, bootsteps going up and down the stairs, various apparitions of both aunts as well as the farmhand, and an overall unsettling feeling. The aura of the house just gets darker and darker by the day. During this time I decided to start ghost hunting in my own damn house. I've always fancied myself as sensitive to the paranormal, knowing when things were going on. I take pictures with my Razr phone. I don't have it anymore, and only had it for the first several months of living there before getting a new phone, whenever I'd feel uneasy. The pictures typically had at least one orb in them at the house. The most unsettling pictures were that of my aunt in her nightgown with her hair covering her face standing by the window in the upstairs bedroom in which I first slept. In that same bedroom, I snapped a picture in the corner near a chair by the closet. That picture contained something different, not human. I take a closer look at the picture, as something is clearly there. It looks like the floating head of a German Shepherd, or some type of dog like that. Being a ghost bro, I was privy to the fact that an apparition of a dog head could mean demons. I decided to, as casually as I could, ask my grandparents if anyone had ever owned a dog at the house. Their answers made my stomach turn.
No. Why do you ask?
No reason, I was just curious. I had ended up showing my uncle the photo of the apparitions I had captured, as he was visiting and lived in the area. My uncle believed in ghosts and the supernatural, but said I ought to give no mind to those things, as only the living can harm me. Decide one day, in the late spring, after several months of living there, that I'd set up my audio recorder I used while ghost hunting in college to see if I can get any EVPs while I leave the house and go visit my grandparents in town. Audio recorder is analog and has tape in it that was 90 minutes long. I give a quick intro about who I am and what I'm doing and tell myself to disregard anything for the next 30 seconds, as it would be just me leaving. I set the tape on the bed of the bedroom upstairs where I had first slept. After that, I leave and visit my grandparents. I'm gone for about 4 hours and come back in the late afternoon. I walk upstairs, whistling a song by Amon Amarth. I'd been listening to their album Twilight of the Thunder God while driving back, to grab the audio recorder, anxious to see what I could have picked up on tape. Puzzled as I enter the room, as I see the record light is still on and it's still recording. Impossible, as I'd been gone for hours and it's a 90-minute tape. Something's fishy. Webm. I stop the tape, rewind it and listen to it from the beginning. What happens next has me absolutely frozen, and I'm getting goosebumps just recalling this. I rewind and hit play, listening to myself giving the little intro and setting it down on the bed. Next, I hear myself walk down the stairs and open up the door and turning on the car, leaving. A few moments pass by, maybe 10 to 20 seconds, and I hear a few clicks. Next thing I hear is me walking up the stairs and whistling that song by Amon Amarth. I turned pale, more pale than I normally am, knowing that something in this empty house. Stopped the recording after I left, and started it back up as I was entering the house again. Weeks go by and spring turns to summer, and summer to fall, and the paranormal activity does nothing but increase. I become an alcoholic, I can't handle the insanity, and I start to drink and get drunk on almost a nightly basis. No peace while the sun was down, even when I had some of the lights on. Simple tasks like doing laundry in the basement became a nightmare, and, since the nearest neighbor lived nearly a mile away, I'd try to drown out the noises by playing really loud music when I had to do laundry, or if I wanted to read in the sunroom at night I couldn't do these in the quiet, as there was no quiet. There was never any quiet, and if there was, it was only due to something far worse making its presence known in the house. I'd try falling asleep at night, only to hear crying, stomping, yelling, and laughing coming from the bedroom above me, the bedroom which I'd never slept in, oddly enough. I flat out avoided that room. One night, I'm asleep, and get awoken around 3 a.m. by a thud so loud that it shook the house. I'm a heavy sleeper, and have, in the past, slept through alarms. This thud was so loud I actually felt it. It vibrated the floor. Nope. Decide against even investigating it. Decided to not even leave my bed. My bedroom was the only place I even felt somewhat safe, as I'd keep the door and curtains closed. The morning comes, about 8 or 9 a.m., and I'm awoken again by a familiar sound, a friendly one. I go out to the kitchen, and, as expected, see my grandpa sitting at the table and helping himself to some Nutter Butter cookies and a soda. I told my grandpa about the thud and say maybe some type of animal fell down the chimney and into the furnace or something. He asks if it could have been the pipes settling or the furnace turning on, and I'd been acquainted with that house well enough that I knew damn well that wasn't the case. He and I go down to the basement to investigate the furnace and all of the ducts we can get into. We came up empty.
Well, whatever it was, is gone now.
We were both puzzled as to what could have caused the noise, but I still refrained from telling him about all of the paranormal experiences. He's a neat freak and does notice the house is getting rather messy, and he notices an ever-growing amount of empty liquor bottles around. I apologize and tell him I'll work on that, and we sit and talk for a while about life, and it's calming me down a bit. I leave for work, and come back at the usual time, about 10 p.m., to the usual occurrences. They just keep getting more numerous, and louder, as if they're trying to drive me away. I plead with them, again, to let me stay. That plea turns into a demand. I inform them that I'm willing to share the house with them, as long as they're respectful of the fact that this is my house now. The activity, while still commonplace, goes to a lull for about a few months, with the activity picking back up again in the winter and continuing through the summer. It's now summer again, almost a year after that loud thud, and the activity continues. I remind them to be respectful, or to leave. Not a satisfactory response. Wave. There's knocking at the door and rustling outside, there's nobody there. Boot steps down the hall again, and cries. This is it. This is the absolute deciding moment. Will I fight or will I leave? Me, being a religious man and well-studied, picked up a Bible and started to prepare for a cleansing exorcism. No, I didn't Google how to exorcism. I felt I had to take on evil as one with authority, not one going by the book, so to say. I walk around all the walls of the house on the main level and basement, making the sign of the cross and saying a prayer in my heart. Bible in hand, I turn to Psalms 23 and start reading, while invoking the name of Christ, and the whole of the Holy Trinity in English, Hebrew, Latin and Greek. As I'm reading, praying, and blessing, the lights in the house dim and start to flicker. The noise really picks up and sounds angry. There is knocking all around the house inside and out. I hear the stomping, I hear the laughter, and all the noises I was accustomed to sounding at once. A feeling of dread I have never felt before or since flooded the house, and all around me was despair. I was in the valley of the shadow of death, but I kept reciting, I kept praying, and I sternly called forth all the spirits and in the name of Christ banished them from the house. All went quiet and the lights stopped flickering. I waited a few moments and listened for any strange knocking, whispers, or anything. They were gone. Final post about the house. I lived in that house for about 6 more months after that, a combined total of 2 years, with a year and a half of the house being haunted, before my grandparents, and I decided that the house was too expensive to heat through what would have been my third winter there, and that perhaps I would be better off finding an apartment closer to work, which was a 45-minute drive from the house. The last few months were quiet and peaceful, like it had never been. I was sad to leave the house, and still consider it my favorite place I've ever lived. I have so many memories of it, both good and bad. Thinking about that house puts a smile on my face, but at the same time, frightens me a little bit. Although the last few months of my living there was done in peace, I wonder if the spirits ever came back after I left. Still, if given the opportunity, I'd live in that house once more. The house will always have a special place in my heart. Here is my third and final story. This is my account of being stalked by a paranormal entity. Be me, age 14 or 15. My family and I had moved into a house my parents had built on an old cattle pasture in the country, near an Ojibwe Indian reservation. The house is very nice, and my parents are pleased with the contractor, despite some scheduling setbacks. I'm excited about the new house, and my room, which was colored baby blue and was littered with Coca-Cola and 50s memorabilia. It was pure Americana and I loved it. I noticed, though, within the first month or so, that the air at night has a strange vibe. I'd feel as though I was being watched, particularly when I went downstairs to the kitchen for a glass of water. Over the course of this time, I begin to feel a presence, not knowing exactly what it is. These odd feelings are what inspired me to start watching stupid shows about the paranormal, such as Ghost Hunters and A Haunting. I've always believed in ghosts, as I've had encounters with them from a very young age, but they were very sporadic. The feeling keeps growing, and now I'm getting these dark images of some creature flashed to me in my mind. I was sometimes afraid to even close my eyes in case more images would come my way. I feel the presence again, I feel the creature is near, so I looked out my bedroom window and saw something standing on two legs, but hunched over, almost the size of a bear, with broad shoulders, a tail, and horns like that of a ram. The creature walked slowly on two legs, but would run on all fours, like a gorilla. I knew that was the thing that had been watching me. It looked up at me as I peeked through the window. Our eyes met, and I'll never forget what they looked like. Its eyes were pitch black like the night, but it had red irises mixed with a bit of yellow. It had a very commanding presence. It wasn't like any other animal. I hid in my bed at night, keeping my shades and curtains closed. I ask my parents if they ever feel uneasy or feel watched in the house.
No, why?
No reason, sometimes I just feel uneasy. It's probably just me getting used to the new surroundings. I get a job at a grocery store right before I turn 16, and I make friends with my coworkers right away. Despite going to a different school than most of them, I became good friends with S, a girl, and N, a guy, who dated each other that I met through E, who went to my school and helped me get the job along with his mother, who also worked at the store. The store, itself, had some odd happenings after one of the cashiers died, but that's a story for another time. The stalking continued. As if I were at work, I'd get flashes in my mind. They were not only of the creature, but of what it saw in both real time and in times past. It would send me rather innocuous things like my friends riding on their bus after school. I bought my own car and drove everywhere after I was 16. But even that was still creepy, because why was the damn thing showing me this, and why was it watching my friends? S and I get to talking about paranormal junk, as I think she watched Ghost Hunters and was vaguely interested in that stuff. But I refrain from telling her about what's going on in my life, at least at first. She and I were texting one night when I was watching TV. If I remember right, it was ECW followed by a rerun of Ghost Hunters on Sci-Fi. We get to talking about the paranormal again. Finally muster up the courage to mention to her that I've been feeling watched, and then describe what it is that I've been seeing. She says that sounded like the thing that she saw as a kid that would occasionally spook her horses. I then get more mental images of an abandoned house not far from me. Images of the land around it, the exterior and interior of the house which appeared to be left a mess. I described the house and land, and the location of it when the images come. She was shocked, as that was the house she grew up in, and then believed what I was experiencing was legitimate. I told her, due to my paranormal sensitivity, that I could probably snap a picture of it on my phone when I felt it near. She said okay. I knew the thing would like to pace around the upstairs hallway near my bedroom and the rec room, which was right across the hall from my bedroom and was where I was watching TV. It never made any noise, but I felt its presence when it was near. It would almost tell me that way. I feel it in the hall, so I turned off the TV and turned off the lights in the rec room, flipped open my phone and went to the camera on it. I slowly opened the door, and snapped a picture with no flash. I looked at my phone to see the picture, and what I captured only made me even more sure of the things I was experiencing. I sent her the picture and asked what she saw. She was frightened, as she saw what I did, 2 black eyes with red and yellow irises. Shortly after that night, maybe a day or two after when I didn't have to work, I decided to drive to that house during the middle of the day, as I knew exactly where it was. Before I bought my car, my school bus would always drive past it. It always gave me the creeps, and I didn't want to get spooked by the thing at night. I drove from the driveway on a dead-end road, and turned left where the gravel road came to a T, and right at the next T. This was it. The pasture and that old house would be right beyond the abandoned, beat-up-looking barn and trees. I had every intention of parking my car in the driveway and checking out the inside of the house to see if whatever has been tormenting me had left clues inside the house. My stomach dropped as I made my way past the trees, and saw a man standing in the open pasture. There were no cars in the driveway, and I knew that house was abandoned, but there he was, a man dressed in black standing in the middle of the pasture near the stable where the horses would have been kept. He was staring at me, grinning. I slowed the car down, in mid-panic, and looked closer at him. He was wearing a black hat, a black duster, a black vest, a black belt, a white shirt, a black bolo tie, black trousers, and black boots. Our eyes met, the same eyes I had seen before. They were black and had red irises with a touch of yellow. He kept his eyes locked on me, and his unnatural smile, which bore his crooked, almost fang-like, teeth, sent shivers down my spine. It wasn't the fact that I was startled at the sight of the man, but that he was so out of place in every aspect of the word. I sped off, not wanting to see that thing anymore. The man and beast were not translucent, as if they were ghosts, but were just like any normal living thing. The stalking happened for years, sending me images of itself, what it was seeing, and what it had seen in the past. It showed me the land my family lived on before there were houses, when only animals called it home, even before the tribes settled in the area. When I moved out for college, the stalking happened less. I'd hear from it less, as I was gone, but it still would occasionally speak in its way to me. I never felt threatened, exactly, but fearful of the unknown. It didn't seem friendly, but it didn't seem like a foe, either. Eventually, during college, it stopped stalking me. Years later, beyond X, maybe 2 years ago. Start a new thread and share the experiences I had about the creature, without mentioning where I lived. One X file suggested that it sounded like the Mishipeshu, which finds its home in the Great Lakes region and is associated with Ojibwe tribes. X file said it may have been warning me about some environmental shit that it may have wanted me to bring awareness to. This caught me off guard, as I was living in Minnesota, just outside of an Ojibwe reservation. I Google Mishipeshu and see drawings which don't look all that close to what I saw, until I saw pic related from the show Grimm, which, although isn't 100% accurate, is very damn close. I still feel it around if I stay the night at my parents' house, but rarely during a day trip, and that's all I've got. Those were my personal experiences, and I really haven't had much contact with the paranormal other than the occasional brush with said creature when I visit my parents. But I typically just live in relative peace, a somewhat normal life, although I'll forever be scarred by the events.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.